Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Niche Cast. I'm the Diggity Doodah Dr. Papatoe Panther, Mr. Slippers, and I'm here joined by the Wobbly Wildcard, and we are going to talk through Blackcaps crickets after their first test loss to Sri Lanka. Over in Sri Lanka, it was the first test of the Test Championship as well. So suddenly we've got a bit of context around our Blackcaps test cricket. And the Wobbly Wildcard is going to help me talk our way through it. Wobbly Wildcard, how go thee?
Yeah, not too bad, Doc. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Except that we did lose a game of Test cricket, so, you know.
Yes, and it's the first test of the Test Championship, and it's got off to a glorious losing start for a Blackcaps team who, other than a good performance in the United Arab Emirates last year against Pakistan, we know the Blackcaps do tend to struggle away from home. And this morning, Wildcard, I've just written a little thingy-majiggy about someone who might help the Blackcaps outside of Aotearoa, and that man is Lockie Ferguson. I believe, I think in this test series, you're just going to see Neil Wagner come into the team for the second test to give them a bit of a wicket-taking option, someone who can manufacture a wicket, and that's what the Blackcaps are going to need away from home to get draws and wins away from home. I kind of view Lockie Ferguson as being better than Neil Wagner, so I'm not saying right now Lockie Ferguson should be in the test team, and I think Neil Wagner still is the best at that job, but I think in the future, going through the Test Championship, Lockie Ferguson may be a solid option in that role. Of course, we've talked about it for a long time now. Lockie Ferguson is a very fine four-day bowler in Aotearoa. He finished as the second best bowler at the World Cup. We saw Jofra Archer go from the World Cup to the England Ashes squad and have an immediate impact. Lockie Ferguson isn't Jofra Archer, but I think it could have been an interesting option just in Sri Lankan conditions. All the Blackcaps seamers are fairly similar. Get someone into ruffle feathers, generate a wicket. But that's more of a case of Neil Wagner wasn't there in the first test to do it. So how are you kind of absorbing all of that information?
No, I think you're spot on. I think Lockie Ferguson, because it has been really interesting to see the rise of Jofra Archer, and he had an immediate impact in that second Ashes test, and just the way that dude has kicked on the international stage. And there is something similar about Lockie Ferguson. He's more experienced, he's a few years older, he's got a bit more perhaps he doesn't quite have as much X factor, but he's certainly got the same wicket-taking ability, and wicket-taking ability was what the Blackcaps missed out on in that fight in that fourth innings against Sri Lanka there. So certainly there's a parallel there, and certainly I think it is only a matter of time, especially following on how well he did at the World Cup. It's only a matter of time before Lockie Ferguson graduates to the Test team, and I think he would have been in consideration for this squad. I don't think that it was necessarily the wrong thing not to pick him, because, conditions being what they are and all that, but I'm pretty confident he will come into the fold, probably into the squad, if not into the 11 in the series against England next up back at home, and certainly I think he's got to be considered as a factor against Australia after that. So, yeah, the dude just seems well poised to crack in. The interesting thing there is how would you manufacture a team around him? I suppose coming back to New Zealand conditions is automatically going to be another seamer, because you're probably dropping one of those spinners, so I think that clears something up. One guy who might have thrown Lockie Ferguson's role into a little bit of weirdness just on a sort of crossover level is Mitchell Santner, because if he's not locking down that all-rounder spot, it makes it harder to get a spinner in there. So perhaps Colin de Gronholm comes in, and that means you want a spinner in one of your other bowlers. But these are all conversations to have later on in different series. But yeah, I think Lockie Ferguson for sure. He just, of all the guys who were knocking at the door, and Will Young's been real close before, I think Lockie Ferguson seems like the obvious guy who's the next man up for the Blackcaps test team in terms of guys who haven't debuted yet.
See, I'm thinking a wee bit differently, because I'm thinking in conditions outside of Aotearoa, that's when Lockie Ferguson's going to have the most value. Because I think inside Aotearoa, the best thing to do is to just stick to the same script. And that's when you have other bowlers ahead of Lockie Ferguson, because you're going to have Matt Henry.
Yeah.
Colin de Grandhomme's a far better option in Kiwi conditions. But when you go to other countries like Sri Lanka or Bangladesh later on in the Test Championship, those are the conditions where I see Lockie Ferguson having the most value. We definitely have a spin bowling group who are very good, I think. But as we saw in the last few days or last day of that Sri Lankan Test, they are good, but they're not kind of razzle-dazzle X-factor wicket-taking threats. They're going to bowl steadily, and they're going to pounce on batsmen's mistakes. And that includes Mitchell Santner, Ajaz Patel, Will Somerville, and Mitchell Santner. So they're good spinners, but specifically, like, you just look at Mitchell Santner's record, he's not a dominant wicket-taking force, and I do believe Ajaz Patel's a better spinner than Mitchell Santner. You know, Will Somerville could be argued as well, whatever, but none of them are really kind of wicket-taking bowlers. They do generate pressure and build into wickets, but without Neil Wagner, it looked a bit ho-hum. Like, it didn't really... Like, you've got a couple of medium pacers coming in without much assistance. Spinners who, you know, against a Sri Lankan team who have seen these type of spinners over and over again, once they figure it out and they can settle into their processes, it's not a major issue. And I think in these kind of conditions, especially with the Test Championship starting, where you need to aim to win tests in overseas conditions. At least if you're trying to win a test, your chances of drawing a test increase. You do not want to lose tests in overseas conditions, because that's going to be the differentiating factor between teams. The Blackcaps going to win in Aotearoa, fine, but they can only be a factor at the top of the Test Championship if they win overseas, and they don't have a very good track record of doing so.
Nah, and that makes the second test pretty crucial, doesn't it? Because dropping points so early on in the Test Championship, I mean, it's real early days. The table hasn't even taken shape. Most teams haven't even played yet. So it's hard to know exactly what to expect from the way things are going to unfold. But certainly, like, just when you consider the teams that the Blackcaps have to play against, and obviously, like, you split in home and away series, so obviously getting points away from home is going to be crucial. You know, if we go over in this first series, we're starting from behind, and I think that might be the kind of thing where we know we're competitive against Sri Lanka. We know we were, when we set that total in the third innings, we knew we were in with a chance to bowl them out and win that test. So if we go on from there and lose another one, I think that's the kind of thing we come into regret in 2 years' time when the Test Championship rolls to a close, and they're, you know, looking to see who made that top two to play the final at Lord's. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah, it puts the second test into a lot of focus, doesn't it? Because it's really important now. It's really important they at least get a draw out of it. You can't be losing back-to-back games and looking to be a serious contender in the Test Championship, like I think the Blackcaps ought to be targeting. Whether they're one of the two best test teams in the world is debatable. We could have gone top overall in the ICC rankings if we'd won 2-0 in this series, but, I mean, we're not going to win 2-0 in this series, therefore we're not going to go top, so I think that's a bit of an irrelevant stat at this point. So, like, whether they're one of those top two teams, okay, well, it doesn't matter. It's all about the performances and the wins on the board, and we've talked about before how the Blackcaps have, compared to some other teams, a bit of a fortuitous scheduling, situation over this Test Championship, where we don't play England, we don't play, I think it's South Africa is the other one. We get teams like, we get India at home, like those kind of things. It's quite beneficial in a lot of ways. We just got to make sure you win the test matches then on top of that. And it's not judged on series, it's judged on individual test results. So yeah, this second test is pretty massive, and I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of Neil Wagner in this one, because Kane Williamson, I thought, just with his captaincy, was a little too reliant in their fourth innings on the two spinners who, like you say, good tidy spinners. Somerville and Ajaz, they know how to lock it down, they know how to build up a bit of pressure, but if the batsmen aren't going to try for that silly release, and there was a brief period there where it was probably too close to the finish line to matter, but like was it Mendes, I think, came in and just tried to bash the ball around and gave up a couple chances, got out fairly quick. then Angelo Matthews came in and polished it off. So like there are a couple times where you saw how these guys can be effective, but when the openers were just going about their business, doing their thing and piling on, close to 150, if not more, for that opening partnership, like they just didn't look like they had enough of a threat, and it's exactly when you needed someone like Neil Wagner to just come in and give you, 5 overs of short pitch, tricky stuff. And yeah, we lacked that little bit of extra punch, that sort of oomph in the bowling lineup, which is hard to generate in Sri Lankan conditions, granted. But yeah, I think you need that from your fast bowlers if your spinners are these type of spinners who, they got a little bit of drift. They mostly kept it on a good line and length, but like there's not a lot of variation there. And we saw old what's his name? Was it Dhananjaya? No, it was the other one, wasn't it? Or these new Sri Lankan spinners I haven't learnt the names of. Akela the Thriller. That is Dhananjaya. I was wrong. / right the first time. So yeah, this dude coming in and bowling like mystery balls. Like he's a leg spinner one ball, he's an off spinner the next. Like this kind of variety. It's not always sneaky on his part. And I think I'm right in saying he got checked for one of those off deliveries, same as Williamson did for the old bowling action. But yeah, when you've got a guy who can offer that kind of variety, and then when he wasn't as effective in the second innings, when maybe the Blackcaps had a better look at him, other spinners stepped up and did things. Like there's just that balance to their spin attack that I think ours was just a little too straight and steady, and it made the batsmen work for their runs, but it didn't offer the variety and the thrill that maybe was gonna kind of crack a partnership there or then. So yeah, I think you're definitely right in that Neil Wagner surely needs to play the second test because he just needs something else. And he had a bad test in was it Abu Dhabi in the UAE? He had a bad test there where he struggled. Ball wasn't bouncing much. It was just kind of sitting up for the Pakistani batsmen who don't mind throwing their bat at those kind of things. And I think Sri Lanka though, I think you've got a different story there where they might be a little more susceptible, and just in short spells, like you say, just short little spells of coming in, let's try get a wicket, if it costs a few runs, whatever, but we're just going to every now and then roll the dice. I think it's the kind of aggressive approach that the Blackcaps need to be a little more wary of, particularly in these away series, because at home we know that we can just keep it on a line and length and the ball's going to nip around a little bit and catch an edge here or there. And if we keep it steady and do what the same approach they had at the World Cup, wasn't it? Just straight and steady and hope that the other team makes the mistakes. Well, when you can put scoreboard pressure on a team, then suddenly that's a factor. When you can rely on your home conditions, and suddenly that's a factor. When you're playing away from home, unfamiliar conditions, not as much. So yeah, a couple work-ons, as the Blackcaps would say, for the second test.
Yeah, just to summarise my thoughts on Lockie Ferguson, like Neil Wagner's the guy right now, but I think soon Lockie Ferguson will be the guy. So it's just about when that happens, and that's what makes Lockie Ferguson so interesting to me.
Could you pick them both in the same? I mean, Ferguson maybe could come in for a Southee, although Matt Henry, like you say, is also competing for that spot, but if you chucked an extra spinner, took an extra spinner out, chucked an extra seamer in, you might want to go with 4 seamers one day in New Zealand, or particularly in Australia, where it's going to be bouncy and quick and just looks like perfect Lockie Ferguson conditions. He debuted in ODIs in Australia, I remember. So, would you consider having them both, or do you think they're kind of playing for the same role in that bowling lineup?
I would have them both in the second test for Sri Lanka. Like well,
there we go.
If it was possible, I would have Trent Boult, Neil Wagner, Lockie Ferguson, Ajaz Patel, and Will Somerville, and then just
who bats at 7? Southee?
He's not playing.
Oh no, it's on the Saturday.
So it's just whoever wants to do the job, whatever. You got 6 batsmen, you got 5 high quality bowlers, and you have the variety of Ferguson, Wagner, Boult. Bolt's going to do the job with the new ball. He might come in and be able to reverse swing, whatever. But you can try Wagner for 6 overs. You can try Ferguson for 6 overs. You can rotate them, be hostile, be aggressive, and look to take wickets. In more favourable seam conditions, especially, I think it also comes into a factor here is, what are the batsmen going to want? In Australia, they're going to want quick bowling. And I don't know, I made the comparison between Jofra Archer and Lockie Ferguson, but in all honesty, Lockie Ferguson has to show that he offers something unique at Test level. Jofra Archer's got it because he's got this bouncer that comes out of nowhere. His whole bowling shtick is how relaxed he is, and then he just steams in and bowls 150 Ks and can move the ball as well at Test level. Lockie Ferguson has shown in Plunkett Shield cricket that he can bowl fast, move the ball into right-handers, bowl short ones, bowl Yorkers, slower balls, whatever he has. But he's got to show that he has a unique style, which could be possible. You know, he's a short, stocky, whippy kind of fast bowler, similar to Neil Wagner, but better, faster, stronger, and all that stuff as well. So I just think, like in Australia or New Zealand, batsmen are going to be prepared for that. Like if you're taking Lockie Ferguson to the Aussies in a Test series, in his first Test series, I'm not as excited about that as I am for Lockie Ferguson coming into a Blackcaps team in Sri Lanka or in Bangladesh and just being unleashed in like a situation where no one would expect him to be unleashed kind of thing. And he can kind of experience how tough Test cricket is in those conditions, but I also think he could be a factor, taking wickets, bowling short, bowling Yorkers, reverse swing. So it's just, I think it like in Kiwi conditions, Colin de Grandhomme, Matt Henry, Tim Southee, Trent Boult, those guys, one spinner, all good. In Australia, we've seen maybe Matt Henry might not be so good. Colin de Grandhomme's not going to get much movement in Australian pitches. He'll probably sit up as a medium pacer. So yeah, a bit of pace from Ferguson could go well. It just depends. I don't think the Kiwis have a bowling attack well suited to bowling in Australia is probably an overall thought.
No, that's probably fair. And I guess it's a matter of you can't just bowl fast, eh? Like it's not enough to just be a fast bowler. You got to be able to, like as you already said, chuck in something different. Just be that, have your unique selling point, that kind of thing. Speaking of doing something different and having a unique selling point, or perhaps not, having a peek at Mitchell Santner's role in that first Test where he was batting at 7, I believe, coming in after 7 coming in and after BJ Watling. So he scored, I think, was it 13, and then he scored 12 in the 2 times he came into bat. He bowled 24 total overs, got none for 69 off 24 overs. So again, economy, very typical Mitchell Santner, but again with Mitchell Santner, just no wickets, and it's getting, I don't know, like this is the first time he'd played a Test since December 2017, so or first time he's bowled in one anyway, and so like it's getting, I don't know, I'm just at the point where it's getting very tiresome to watch Mitchell Santner come in and not take wickets, and I think when you're in that position, when we've already got 2 other spinners, and you see he wasn't even getting much of a go because we're relying on the other 2 spinners during this Test, it's just, like, if he's not scoring runs either, and it's a long-held conversation whether Mitchell Santner's ability actually stacks up as an all-rounder, or if he should be working his way up the order from sort of 9 downwards or whatever, like, it's, I don't know, I'm finding it a little bit difficult to justify the fact that he keeps getting picked for the Test team, to be honest. And he had a while out while he was injured. Other guys came in and did okay in his wake. I mean, Patel and Somerville both did fantastically in that UAE series. Like, I'm struggling to see why he keeps playing, to be honest. And at times it has felt like he has a bit of a just a leg up for a couple reasons. One, because he's a familiar guy in the team, so there's a bit of, I don't know if complacency is the right word, but just familiarity there, and also the fact that he at least profiles as an all-rounder, even if he doesn't seem to be producing much at Test level, because I don't want this to cloud the fact that he's an excellent shorter form bowler, especially when that economy rate suddenly becomes a weapon in itself. But at Test level, he doesn't, the fact that he could be an all-rounder seems to be holding him in against guys like Patel and Somerville, who don't really seem like they can bat massively. Although having said that, Somerville, I think it was his highest first-class score in that in the second innings for the Kiwis in that first test, so good on him. Maybe he would have to bat at 7 in your 5-bowler lineup. I don't know. Where are you at with Mitchell Santner? Because it sounds like there's a decent chance he gets dropped for the next test, which is tomorrow, isn't it? Thursday afternoon. But at this point, I'm surprised he just keeps playing.
That's the.
I mean, it's fatigue, right? When he keeps, I was looking at the stats. He hasn't taken 3 wickets in an inning since we went to India in 2016. Since then, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 innings he's bowled in. 4 of those he didn't even get to 10 overs. 4 of those he didn't even get to 10 overs. He hasn't taken more than 2 wickets in any of those. He's got 0 for and more than he's got 2 for. What's this dude offering to the test team exactly?
It's just funny how the apathy, it's worse for this situation to be like, I just don't know why he keeps getting selected. And it's just like, he should not be selected. It's kind of worse to be in that no man's land where you're just like, why do you keep getting selected? It's just a weird situation. But before I do touch on Santner, can we just agree that there's nothing really to talk about with the batsmen? They didn't bat in the warm-up game. The most telling thing here is that Kane Williamson has scored the least runs of any New Zealand batsman from that test. So if that's the baseline, well, that's not happening again. So whatever, just as they say, flush the dunny and move on with regards to the batting and the batsmanship, and just whatever. It was what it was. Mitchell Santner. Yes, he's not doing a whole lot to command selection, and suddenly suddenly it's not just Mitchell Santner versus Ish Sodhi. Now it's Mitchell Santner versus Ish Sodhi versus Todd Astle versus Will Somerville versus Ajaz Patel. And funnily enough, Ish Sodhi's not in the squad, and Mitchell Santner is well behind the premier 2 spinners, and probably, who knows? Who knows where Mitchell Santner stacks up against Todd Astle? So it's a bit of a fall from grace for those 2 young spinners that we've talked a lot about over the years. You could just replace Mitchell Santner with Todd Astle. That could be an option. Replace Mitchell Santner with Colin de Grandhomme could be an option. Or Mitchell Santner out, Neil Wagner in, and you just hope that Tim Southee can actually do something with the ball, because he took 1 wicket in 19 overs at an average of 50. And he is also someone who has not really delivered a whole lot for the Blackcaps, and appears to be getting a fairly cruisy ride. These 2 dudes are the epitome of, what are you actually doing?
What have you done for me lately?
Yeah, and they both are also enjoying cruisy light rides through the Blackcaps, and I think I think we're just in a stage of overlap wildcard where the vibe from the past few years is that there's a set group of cricketers. They're going to play most of the cricket for the Blackcaps. But now, as I've talked about, there's greater depth in cricket in Aotearoa. And so now we're looking at these dudes, and we have to genuinely ask ourselves, what are you offering this team? Because there's someone else who may offer more. Whereas before that wasn't the case. So you could just say Tim Southee, he's always going to be there. Mitchell Santner, he looks good when he bats. His bowling, the drift, the spin, the change of pace, he looks like Dan Vettori, holy shit. But he's not doing anything. And we have other guys who can also play that role in terms of batting a bit and spinning the ball. So, I don't know, they're kind of... Someone has to make way for Neil Wagner, by the sounds of it, for both of us. I wouldn't be overly disappointed if Mitchell Santner won selection again. I think it's the safe move. So you keep the 3 spinners, you bring in Wagner for Tim Southee, and you just give them an opportunity to do what they can do. And if Mitchell Santner doesn't perform here, then you've got to ask some more serious questions.
Mitchell Santner, looking at the... I said the last time he took 3 wickets was that test in Calcutta. So since then, he's played 9 times. He has a bowling average of 57.5. He had best bowling of 2 for 13 in those 9 tests. He's bowled 208.5 overs for 10 wickets. So strike rate of 125.3, which is absolutely shocking, to be honest. Struggle to see how that could, especially like you say, he might play another game. He might play this next test just because it's sort of like there's an existing squad. He's already there. This is what, they're not going to make drastic changes between one test and the next because they weren't that far off. A couple early wickets and they could have put some real pressure on Sri Lanka and they might have been challenging to win this test. They were certainly in a good position, it looked like, when their final innings ended, coming into that 4th innings. So drastic changes maybe not necessary. Like I wouldn't start a riot if Mitchell Santner gets picked again. But if he then continues to not take wickets, and then we've had 10 test matches where he's taken like 10 wickets combined, then I don't really see how he can be a factor coming back for the test against England and then go into Australia afterwards. Because, I mean, if he's not getting wickets in Sri Lanka, he's not going to be getting wickets in Australia, is he? Tim Southee actually has been getting decent. He's been chipping away. He got 6 for against Sri Lanka in Wellington. Yeah, Wellington last year, sort of in December over the summer. He got a couple 3-fers against Bangladesh, chipped in with multiple wickets in all those innings against Sri Lanka. So he's been doing a lot better recently in test matches, but I will say those are almost all of them at home, and I think he's only played this was only his 2nd test in the last almost 2 years, so 23 months. This was only his the 2nd time he's bowled in a test match away from New Zealand. So yeah, he does seem to be getting a little bit of a soft ride just in terms of he's always in the squad, but he's also a squad leader and he offers something very valuable when the ball swings around. But yeah, I think it might have been a mistake to pick him for this test, and we're starting to see he didn't play a lot at the World Cup. I think he only played the 1 game, didn't he? So nowadays he does seem to be the first seamer to miss out, and Trent Boult is Mr. every day. He plays every condition, every situation. He's our world-class bowler. He has to be there, the head of the bowling unit. But yeah, Southee seems to be clinging on a little bit, but at least in New Zealand conditions he's still got a role. Santner hasn't been taking wickets anywhere, so what do you do? I think I predicted in the pre-test preview for this test, I thought that de Grandhomme should have played instead of Southee, bolster the batting attack a little bit, bolster the bowling attack not so much, but at least you got a guy who can just hit a line in length, and bowling slowly maybe might be a little more effective considering that's just his game already, whereas Southee is trying to do things that this pitch isn't allowing him to do. And I don't think he'll play the 2nd test, and Santner's probably clinging on by his fingernails as well. But I wonder, if we're talking about Santner playing a lot of games and maybe not producing to that level, one fella who seems to be getting picked a lot without being, necessarily a standout, just a solid guy delivering at domestic level, but certainly has never done anything internationally that makes you think pick him for every squad. But maybe this is the opportunity for Todd Astle. Could this be the time that Todd Astle comes in, bowls a bit of leg spin? At least you get some variety with that, something else. There's something different. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think maybe this might be Todd Astle's time to shine. He played his 1st test in Sri Lanka. Maybe he'll play his next test in Sri Lanka.
I do wonder what our over-unders for Mitchell Santner would be in Test cricket. That's an interesting thought, just to how many tests does he play in the remainder of his career? We don't have a great track record with our over-unders, but I think Mitchell Santner may be a next candidate, just depending on what happens in the coming months.
He is younger than all these spinners, though, so that keeps him in the mix. I think he'll play a lot more test matches in his career, personally, but maybe a bit of time off playing some Plunket Shield games wouldn't go astray.
Correct, and I do wonder about Astle. I think Astle just needs to be given a crack. We just need to.
Agreed.
And I think this flows into what will be our last topic about the spinners, because we did say prior to this test that it's going to be bloody interesting to see, what the spinners do and how this sorting process works its way through the spinning ranks. Part of that is wanting to see what Todd Astle can do. Mitchell Santner didn't take his chance, so give Todd Astle his chance. That's all good. But as in terms of like takeaways from that first test, AJ Patel and Will Somerville bowl nicely wildcard. They bowl nicely, and I think they, I wrote this morning that they have played a combined 8 tests. So, and this was obviously their first test series or first test in Sri Lanka, where, Kane Williamson, Trent Boult, Tim Southee, where those guys have only played 2 or 4 tests in Sri Lanka. So it's a place where not a lot of the Blackcaps have experience, and I wasn't surprised to see Patel and Somerville not necessarily fade, but their effectiveness in terms of consistently threatening to take wickets did plateau as the pitch got flatter and everything just kind of fell in favour of the Sri Lankan batsmen, and they batted well. They knew what to do against those spinners. So you're going to see AJ Patel and Will Somerville learn and try to get better, but just the revolutions on the ball, the way the ball moves in the air. Like there was one dismissal for AJ Patel, who I'm just amazed by his simple action and kind of the torque that you can visibly see in the torque he puts into the ball, and all of that stuff is interesting to me as a bit of a cricket nerd. But there was a delivery in the first innings where he got it to drift away from the left-hander at the very, very, very last moment of the delivery, and then spun the ball past the bat. BJ Watling got a stumping, and the first kind of full-speed glimpse, it looked like, jeepers creepers, what's this batsman up to? Just waltzing down the pitch trying to whack AJ Patel, no respect. But then as they offered the slow motions, you start to see the ball curve and drift away from the left-hander, and suddenly it turns a safe, reliable bit of footwork down the pitch just to nudge the ball somewhere or try and intimidate the bowler. Suddenly that turns into a mistake because of the movement in the air. And that's what I noticed the most about AJ Patel. Will Somerville was obviously very solid as well. And just the height variations, the left-hand, right-hand variation, the way they can both move the ball in the air. And they're not spinners who, like, sometimes it does look like Mitchell Santner's struggling to genuinely spin the ball. His spin bowling looks nice, but it's not exactly, it doesn't feel like he's ripping the ball and getting the revolutions to get nice, solid spin off the pitch. It's more flight variations in speed and where he's delivering it from, and then a bit of spin. Will Somerville and AJ Patel were ripping the ball off the pitch, especially in that first innings. And I was impressed by those two spinners, and I'm interested to see. They were both good in the first test, but they got a bit of a reality check about maintaining and sustaining that threat throughout a whole test match, and to be able to perform. Like if you're a Kiwi spinner and you're going into day 5 of a Sri Lanka and test in Sri Lanka, you should be thinking, holy shit, here we go, now's my chance to step up in the clutch and dominate. There were variables like the Sri Lankan batsmen, like the pitch and the conditions that impacted that. But I also want to see how they respond with that mindset and that drive to be factors in these conditions.
Yeah, like coming back to something I said at the start, I think Williamson's captaincy didn't massively help the way that the spinners were used in the second innings. I thought he just relied on them in long spells for too long, while Sri Lanka, who was it, Tiramani and Karunaratne were just getting a little too comfortable, and the score was getting away from us at that point. It wasn't a big total that we set. We were relying on the fourth innings being the same as the first 3, where runs were a bit tricky to come by, where wickets fell in clumps, and where it was difficult to get in early on. But it wasn't really the case, as once these two got settled in, we just kind of relied on bowling the same 2 guys over and over and over. And I think Somerville bowled 30 odd overs in that innings, didn't he? I can check that. He bowled 31, Patel bowled 18 and took a little bit of heat going for over fours, economy-wise. No one else bowled more than 13, so... Yeah, I thought just mixing it up a little bit more, but we didn't really have that bowling option. I was surprised not to see Bolt just get a 3 or 4 over spell in the middle of that just to break things up and keep it interesting. But yeah, I guess you pick spinners, you pick extra spinners in conditions like this. You do it because you're hoping that they will be the difference on the fourth innings on the 5th day. But it wasn't quite the case, and it is easy to forget that these two guys who are pretty experienced, played a lot of first-class cricket, taken a lot of first-class wickets, especially Patel in the Plunket Shield the last 3 or 4 years. It's easy to forget that they also don't have, you can count on one hand how many tests each of them have played. So that kind of, these lessons you got, the kind of lessons you can only learn on the fly, and this is why it pays to give guys extended runs at this level. It's something someone like Henry Nicholls, for example, has benefited from a lot. I think Jeet Raval's shown benefits of that as well. Even Tom Latham, to be honest. But yeah, with the spinners, you do have to accept that they might be experienced. They might know their game extremely well. They might know how they bowl and exactly where their strengths lie, how they get their wickets, but it is a step up to do it in Sri Lanka in a test match in the Test Championship. So yeah, it was maybe a bit much to ask for them to just roll through the order the second time around, even though they took 8 wickets between them in the first innings. I thought Ajaz Patel in particular was fantastic in the first innings, getting fifer, but yeah, ultimately we just didn't have that edge in the 4th innings, did we? And that's why we lost the test.
Keep an eye on the Ajaz Patel caught and bowled as well. He got one in the warm-up game, and then he got one in the first test, and I don't know how much his caught and bowled action is a part of the domestic cricket smorgasbord, but I suspect with how straight he bowls, his change in pace, his flight, his spin that he gets, that we're going to see Ajaz, like if he's taken wickets, a lot of them will be caught and bowled. Just one last thing, wildcard. Kane Williamson's a chucker, right?
I mean, there's a little kink in the elbow, sure. I don't know if it's that 15 degrees or not, but there's definitely a little bit to it.
Like it looks like he's throwing the ball when he delivers it, and it's just it might be a bit of a social experiment. You know how we view Indian, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lankan bowlers who throw the ball. Not Kane Williamson can't throw the ball. No, not Kane Williamson. He's the darling. He's not a thrower. Like, it's just an interesting idea, because to me, Kane Williamson definitely throws the ball, and he didn't bowl for a long time because of that. And in this test, he got back to bowling, and he just straight up looked like he biffs it.
And he got marked up for it too, didn't he? So, yeah, I guess that puts a little more perspective. It's probably another thing that we've forgotten, that he's been in trouble for this before, when people are sitting there going, why doesn't Williamson bowl himself more? And I've been one of those people, like, just give yourself a couple overs. Personally, because in my point of view, I would say keep chucking it until they tell you not to. But yeah, they've told him not to. Although he's allowed to bowl until the test results come through, so he could still bowl in the second test if he wants to. But I think he's a little too, I don't know. I think he's maybe a little embarrassed about these things. So I don't know that we'll see him get the ball in his hand too often. Even then, he only waited until the game was almost done in the 4th innings. So yeah, he's always been a hesitant bowler, and I guess this is part of why.
Rightio, we'll wrap it up there. The Blackcaps' second test versus Sri Lanka is on Thursday night, so hopefully this will be out late Wednesday, early Thursday, so you better catch it. During
Wednesday Arvo, probably.
Yeah, during that second test, plenty of interesting stuff happening on the Niche Cache and via the Niche Cast, so pay attention to that. And otherwise, we'll probably see you soon on the Niche Cast and our various little channel thingies, majiggies. So kia kaha, stay beautiful, and enjoy the Blackcaps cricket stuff.